I'd like to talk to you today about reality, what reality really is and what it isn't. We'll begin with what our human bodies are and the illusions we all have about them. I want to talk about what we're made of and how we're not made out of the stuff that we're accustomed to thinking we are. And also, I want to talk about how this seems to be leading to a seriously major change in the way we look at ourselves and the way we look at our world. We may be heading into a paradigm shift, a major rethinking of our assumptions about reality. Now, you may say, wait a minute, is there really anything to see here? Science has already gone very deeply into the nature of reality. They know all about quarks and atoms and protons, all that kind of stuff. And you'd be right. Science has studied the nature of reality intimately, and they continue to do so enthusiastically, and they know a lot about it. But this is actually the problem, because what science tells us about the nature of our bodies is hugely different from what we intuit and what we generally believe. So, let's take a little trip into how things are and how they seem to be. Where we're going has been the realm of saints and mystics throughout the centuries. But now finally, concrete, absolutely provable scientific knowledge is showing us a new path into what we are, into what our world is, and along the way, it's confirming many age-old insights. So, close your eyes and imagine it's a sunny morning and you're just waking up. You're on your sleeping platform covered in furs in ancient Greece. You stretch and yawn and actually feel pretty good about things, which may not be surprising, because one thing about being ancient is that you know that you are right in the center of the universe. And that's obvious to you and everyone around you, because every night you can look up and see all the stars and the moon revolve around you. You know that every morning the god Helios loads the sun into his chariot, drives it across from one side of your world to the other side of your world, just for you. All the gods on Olympus care about you. They focus on you. Your paradigm then is you are the center of everything. And your world is full of mystery, magic, and excitement. Signs and omens are everywhere. The underworld is filled with dragons and giant three-headed dogs. Griffins and unicorns live in faraway lands where lost ships sail off the edge of the world. And that's another thing that's obvious to you and everyone else. The fact that the world is flat is just part of the paradigm. You can climb a mountain or look out onto the ocean, look out and you can see the world is flat, laid out before you. Still have your eyes closed? Well, now let's try to imagine how it feels to be right smack dab in the center of the universe, to be the crown of all creation and the focus of the gods. The closest thing we have to it today might be being an only child, at least for a while. Okay, a few centuries go by, and now there's a hot new startup in town called science. This new sheriff says the rule from now on is we only are going to believe stuff we can prove. Reason rules, cause and effect. Which is all well and good until these newfangled science ideas start chasing away the dragons and fairies. They laugh at the oracles and magic and call them superstitions. They even question the gods. This is definitely not your grandmother's world anymore. And by the way, science says, fixing us with a cold stare. You always thought you were so special. Well, guess what? Instead of being the charming darling of the gods in the flowery, pampered center of everything, you're actually just some slightly smart monkeys. And there's another paradigm shift, evolved monkeys. And actually, you live on a common little planet in an obscure, dusty corner of an insignificant galaxy. You're just helpless little cogs in a big celestial machine, isolated, disconnected, entirely on your own. Don't look for any help from your imaginary friends and your little fairies. Okay, now this is a demotion. Talk about being unceremoniously cast out of the Garden of Eden. Okay, now let's close our eyes again and see how that feels. We're dethroned, told to grow up and realize we're basically nothing. Can you feel that world that's the opposite from life in the center of the universe? More like in the armpit of the universe? Sort of familiar, don't you think? A little more real, a little more like today. Yeah, well, maybe in some ways the ancient world was more fun than this scientific one. But this is what science does and always has done. Shakes us out of our belief in things that we think are obvious, but which it can prove are totally false. And these paradigm shifts can take a while. When we went from living on a flat earth at the center of everything to living on a giant spinning ball that circles around the sun, it took about 100 years for people to accept. So science took a lot of the childish joy from the world, but it also took away a lot of fear, like of demons and evil spirits. It cured terrible illnesses and created amazing and wonderful things like being able to travel the planet in days instead of years, to eat tropical fruits in Alaska in the middle of winter, and talk for hours with people on the other side of the world like you're in the same room. These things we do routinely today were not available to kings and emperors in the past, in the recent past. So science has produced many wonders, and science is also providing a new updated version of the very grounds of our existence. Knowledge is always good, and it can sometimes have the power to truly change the world in very basic ways. So wouldn't it be great if this new knowledge from science can give us back the key to living in harmony with ourselves and with the world? Not that we ever really had it, but probably more than today. Sort of like the old way, but even better. A way for us to rediscover our oneness with nature. A way to really throw open the doors to a new type of consciousness. And what if it can build all that on a rock-solid foundation of provable truth and fact? Well, that would be pretty exciting. That might be the mother of all paradigm shifts, the biggest one of all. So let's take a look at this new and magical world which science has now laid out before us. Hold up your forefinger and look at it. What do you see? Okay, no big deal, it's forefinger. But science says, wait a minute, it's a lot more than that. We know that our bodies, like everything else, are made of atoms. And atoms are more interesting than we might think. Little balls of energy or force. Amazingly tough. Splitting atoms, not easy. That's how you get nuclear bombs. Everything in that finger is made of atoms. In the hard parts, the atoms are fitted tightly together like stacked cannonballs, which makes it rigid. And where things are softer, the atoms have looser bonds so they can slide around each other. So what are these atoms made of? Well, one of the guys who first figured out a lot about atoms, John Dalton, in the beginning of the 1800s, thought they would turn out to be, quote, solid, massy, hard, impenetrable, movable particles. But is that what scientists found a century later when they developed the actual techniques to get down and figure out what atoms were made of? No, it was the opposite. Instead of being hard and impenetrable, the atoms themselves were found to be basically empty. Almost no matter, no solid in them at all. Actually, this finger is made up of energy or force. It's non-material. Okay, now all that is true, but this next part is imagination, sort of. We're going to take a few liberties with terms like energy and force because we don't have a good vocabulary to talk about these things. But we'll stick as close as possible to what science knows. And if you're an actual scientist, please feel encouraged to correct anything I might say. So let's pretend that this energy finger, that everything this energy finger touches also becomes energy. Energy likes circuits and connections, like the electrical system in your house. All the circuits are there connecting everything, and all the connections have to be tight. So let's make a connection with the tip of this forefinger between these two fingers. And we'll do the same with this one, this one, oops, this one, this one, this one. They should fit into their nice little sockets very securely, and you can really shove them in there. Okay, now if those connections are good enough, it should turn all of our fingers into energy, because remember, this one turns everything it touches into energy. Okay, so now we have this nice little energy basket. Now you won't be able to see this, but let's press the soles of our feet together. If you're sitting cross-legged, it's pretty easy. And place our energy basket around the other 10 digits we have, our toes. Feel them turning into energy, which starts up our ankles, turning deep red. As the flow hits our hips and pelvic area, the energy turns orange. Then up the spectrum to yellow in our solar plexus, slightly lemon yellow. How do I know that? Well, that's just gotten from a picture of an actual spectrum, which is a scientific thing, a phenomena, not something anyone made up, but the chakras align with or I believe they should align with an actual spectrum. Our whole bottom half is now dissolved into energy. And now up our chests to where the force is a light yellowish green. Then to your throat, starting with pale blue, turning to a darker midnight blue. Up through our necks, turning violet and purple as the features on our face drop their tension. And our entire brain is a beautifully flashing violet energy system. Finally, all your colors merge and form white light, as all colors do form white light, around your body. And your body is a ball of iridescent white energy. Can you see your body this way? A ball of energy or force? Well, at this point, the thing we resemble most is a very, very, very large atom. Now, if we're an atom, that means we're 99.9999999, should be 7 nines, empty space, or as physicists like to say, space filled with electron clouds. And electrons, by the way, have zero physical matter in them. And don't we have anything solid in us at all, this whole body? Let's take a look. No, nothing, nothing. Oh, wait. Right down there in the middle of the solar plexus area, I just caught a glint of light from something too small to clearly see. Yep, that fits. Science says that every atom has a solid nucleus about 100,000 times smaller than the atom itself. So that thing is awfully small. Let's expand ourselves up to the size of Autzen Stadium. We're imagining this so we can do whatever we want. So we're growing, big as a house, getting bigger. Okay, yep, I'm the size of this enormous stadium. And now my nucleus, where is it? Oh, there it is, right there in center field. It's the size of a blueberry. Okay, now if you look online on the website of the US Department of Energy, you can read that every human body has an amount of solid matter as big as one speck of lead dust. And lead is pretty heavy, so a speck of lead has to be very small to be dust, I assume. And that if you put all of these specks from all the humans on the planet together, all now 8 billion of us, I guess, then you'll get a mass the size of a sugar cube. You can find that all over the net on university and science websites. Physicists seem to like that image. So atoms have very, very little matter, but what most atoms do have is harmony and stability. As an atom, we are a perfect perpetual motion machine with our electrons spinning forever in pure balance with the tiny nucleus. Let's feel that timeless harmony. Perfect balance. We could sit here and exist for 10 million years without any change. Like John Lennon sang in Across the Universe, nothing's gonna change my world. So is all this proven or just a theory? Well, science likes to call everything theory so that concepts can evolve when new information comes up, but theories are built from facts. That atoms are almost entirely empty is a scientific fact. And remember, the structure of the atom is the underlying concept upon which our entire modern world rests. From knowing about electrons, we get electronics. Without electronics, no computer, no cell phone, no jumbo jet you step aboard and entrust your life to. If somehow the structure of matter, the concept, what we know about it, turned out to be wrong, that jumbo jet would fall out of the sky and our whole digital world would fall apart. So it's pretty solid. So do all scientists believe this, or are there some who have different views, different ideas about atoms? As far as I know, no. There's not one scientist or physicist anywhere who doesn't accept the structure of the atom. It would be like saying the Earth doesn't revolve around the sun, when it's pretty obvious these days that it does. About 100 years ago, the structure of the atom idea was new, and the concept was vigorously discussed and argued. But then it was proven again and again and permanently laid to rest as settled scientific fact. So what about us? Do we accept that this picture of atoms is a real proven thing? Is this really how our world and ourselves are built? What do we think? Ask yourself if you accept it or not. But one more thing I want to say on this. This is not a belief, like a belief in a religion or tarot or a guru. We all have beliefs, some passionate and some casual. I believe there's a purpose to life. I can't prove it, but that doesn't bother me. I choose to believe it. Beliefs are great and inspirational and can have real benefits, but they can't be proven. So they're not established truth of science. And today we're not talking about beliefs. We're talking factual science. If you can't prove it, it ain't science. So what do you think? If you have any doubts, it's probably best to research it a bit and come back. It's an important step here for you to know that you're totally on board with the immaterial atom. Okay, we agree that these friggin' little atoms are almost entirely made of force or energy. Science says it, and we accept it. But let's take one more step. There's one more concept here that we need. Okay. We've got 3 plastic spheres here. There's this one, double the size of the first one. And there's this one, double the size of the last one. And we have a little ball here, 2 balls here, 4 balls here. So 1, double, double again. Okay, let's take this ball, drop it in, take these 2, mush them together to make a ball, sort of, drop it in. And we take all 4 of these, mush them all together to make a ball. And what we're looking at now is the proportion of the sphere to the ball. Now we doubled everything on both sides, and what we should find is that whether we're looking at the middle one, or let's put the balls in the back a little bit more. Let's see if we can make them a little more easy to see. So you shouldn't really be able to tell one from another. If I didn't tell you that this was the big one, you couldn't be sure that it wasn't the little one, looking at the proportion between the ball and the sphere. And we could have kept going with that if we had more spheres, till we had 10, 20, 20,000, and the proportion should never change. We could have a sphere as big as the Earth, and the ball that still looked the same size inside that sphere, as long as we just keep doubling everything. And you can also do this with math quite simply. It's not as tactile and it's harder to see, so that's why I did it that way. But if you make the big sphere 100 and the little ball 1, what's the proportion? 1 to 100, obviously. If you double both, you have 200 to 2, which is still the proportion of 1 to 100. And 100,000 to 1,000, still 1 to 100. You can do it 20 trillion times, the proportion will remain the same. I think this principle is called the proportional constant by mathematicians. We're not mathematicians, but I ask you now, do you accept this as a true thing? Does this seem like something that is very solid, reliable, and dependable? It will never change. something you can say, yeah, that's a true thing. This doubling of things and the proportions remaining the same. So ask yourself, I'll ask you, what do you think? If you say yes, well, now we're in really big trouble. I mean, I've said yes because I don't see any way out of it. And but that means that we have just proven that and accepted that our bodies are immaterial, just like the atom is. So there's the paradigm shift right there, major paradigm shift. I've spent my whole life believing that I and everyone else were made out of solid stuff, beings of substance, bone, blood droplets, stuff. I didn't think of myself as being made out of whirling little globes of nothing or force. But science says we have no substance. So what are we, ghosts? The idea is absurd, which unfortunately doesn't make it any less true. So, if this is the way things are, why can't we perceive it? My physical perceptions all say this is somehow BS, a clever little construct that's sort of true but not really relevant to our lives. Like people sometimes say we're made out of stardust, which is very romantic sounding and has a little bit of real truth in it, but mostly it's just that romantic notion. This is different. Being immaterial means that we live with some serious illusion every day of our lives, and it will not be that easy to break out of. Okay, science has proven it. So if we're not fond of applying the term science deniers to ourselves, we have no rational option but to accept it and go on with it. So let's look at the bright side. Although it may be hard to leave our comfortable, lifelong assumptions, there's a new, exciting world of energy, force, and connection waiting to be explored. Seekers have been making attempts to understand the mysterious inner workings of the world since time immemorial, and we hold many of them in the highest reverence for what they've been able to teach us. Knowing now that we inhabit an immaterial world of energy will give us a powerful tool for reaching harmony within ourselves, with each other, and with the entire world. In subsequent videos, we'll find some use for this and get on with it. Thanks.